Guys, it's Leanna with PrimaGames.com, and today I wanted to talk about Final Fantasy VII the Remake. Obviously, we have our review up on the site. Everybody's been playing it. We have over 100 guides. It's insane. There's so much to unpack, especially if you're a fan of the original. And even though we've talked about it a bunch in the past, we wanted to make this little video just to kind of have a conversation about it. It's really interesting to me because, for those that might not know, I'm 32. I've been gaming for 30 years. It's been a huge part of my life, especially growing up. And the original Final Fantasy VII was amazing. Like, I think I've played that original game so many times. It's insane. Like, the character development I really loved. I remember really just wanting to be Tifa. And obviously Sephiroth. I have long silver hair. There's a reason for that. Sephiroth is a big was one of my big first video game crushes, which everybody has those. So to be able to see those characters that I grew up with in a more modernized environment with this generation's graphics, and the remake itself just does a really good job at fleshing out those characters that we met in the 90s. It was a really interesting experience for me. And I remember, so when I got my copy, I sat down and I couldn't believe it. And it's, this is going to come off the wrong way to some, I'm sure, but I usually prefer to play on PC. I like the keyboard and mouse options better. I like the ability to mod. So most games, if it has the option to come out on PC, I will choose that over anything. Right now, Final Fantasy VII Remake is only available for PlayStation 4 players, so I obviously play that. I kind of dug my PlayStation out, dusted it off, and the embarrassing amount of dust that was on it. And I remember sitting down with the controller and the opening credits coming out. And even though I had already played through this part before with a closed press demo, I still had tears in my eyes. I felt so connected to what was going on the screen. And I kept expecting that to taper off. While I was playing, doing the side quest, doing the main quest, going, unlocking chapter by chapter, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for the moment where I don't care as much, or I'm okay to put the controller down, and that never really happened. It's been a while since I've done long gaming sessions. Usually I'll play 2-3 hours max, just because of time limits, and I don't really have the time to be doing that, and also just the ability to concentrate for that long time is dwindling as I age. So what's been interesting was the fact that I really couldn't put the controller down, and then before I knew it, I was 30 hours into the game, and it was insane how enthralled I was. And because that's rare for me, it takes a lot to keep my interest, not because I'm like, oh, you got to impress me. It's not about that. It's just I have the attention span of a walnut. And I kept expecting, obviously there's changes. It's not a remaster, it's a remake. So there is going to be intricate changes to the design, to the narrative flow. I mean, it's to be expected. And I was really nervous going in. I debated not even playing it because I was really nervous, because the original Final Fantasy 7 and 8 both have really special parts in my my heart. So I was trepidatious. I was nervous. I didn't know how I would receive it, or if I would connect with it the same way. And I don't know, it's not that serious, but I was worried about that. I was worried that I would lose that connection to a game that's meant so much to me for so long. And I didn't. And in fact, it's grown incredibly strong, that love for Final Fantasy VII. And it's funny too, because my partner, he walked in and he said the amount of times he walked in, and my eyes were just bug-eyed wide, and I had tears in my eyes, my mouth was hanging open, was insane. And that's a huge testament to just how enthralled I was. I was so zeroed in, and especially, without giving spoilers, chapter 9 was everything I wanted it to be, and more. There's, without going into detail, obviously everybody knows the drag queen sequence happens. Square Enix confirmed that a long time ago with a very exciting trailer. And I was excited to see how that would play out, because I remember it didn't exactly transition well with the polygon style of the original. A lot of the nuance was lost. It was still awesome, but to see it in this generation's graphics were incredibly interesting and hilarious and awesome. And for me, that whole sequence really was done well. It wasn't tropey, which it's a delicate balance, because you don't know when you do things like that, it can come off as almost disrespectful to those communities, or it could come off like this big comedic thing and almost, like I said, disrespectful, but demeaning that community. And whether you agree with it or not, drag is a huge community. There's a lot of power in it. There's a lot of community and family and connection in that community. And I felt like the entire honeybee sequence was very respectful to that art form, as well as very respectful of gender, and gender assignments and gender perception and losing that gender perception. It was done in a way that made sense for the environment. It made sense for the character, but it wasn't done in a way that would make anybody feel like it was getting shoved down their throat. And I think they handled that entire chapter just beautifully. It was very respectful to a lot of different communities, and it could have easily gone the other way. The smallest misstep can turn something that has a comedic edge into a comedic scapegoat. And I was kind of worried that was going to happen, because it is hard to do that. I'm very, even when I have to write pieces that I know some people are going to not want to see, there's a lot of nuance, and you have to be very careful about how you present that context. And I think Square Enix did an amazing job with bringing a scene that was so amazing and such a like almost cult-like addition to the original, and bringing that into this generation was just a very cool example, one of thousands of examples of why this was such a well done project. And it's very cool, because as somebody that's played the original a lot, I was also kind of worried that I would be a little bit bored, because I would know where the storyline was going. And I didn't. They changed things in a way that made it all very new, while still having the ghost of an outline to follow. So I knew a general scope of what was going to happen, but I didn't know the one-liners. I didn't know the interactions, the expanded, fleshed out Midgar citizen interactions, the side quest, being able to just grab cute little kittens, and that's a part of a side quest, was awesome and amazing. And there were obviously things that were a little bit not wrong, but could have been done better. Pacing was off a little bit, especially between chapters 6 and 9. There was a little bit of a pacing issue, but combat was really fun. I was engaged, even though I was a little sad to see that they did away with the turn-based combat. It still was done in a way that you can see the influence, and I think that is going to be something that is going to help bring in a lot of new players that have maybe never experienced Final Fantasy VII, while also tailoring itself and becoming an enjoyable experience for seasoned veterans of this game, who have a certain expectation going in that I feel like Square Enix really honored in a way that a lot of people enjoy. So it's really cool to see how remakes and remasters, they're nothing new. Especially in the last couple of years, they've been very popular, very very, very, very prevalent in today's modern gaming development climate. But sometimes they're not worth it. Or sometimes it's just like, yeah, that was a cool experience, but let's move on. And then when end credits rolled with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I felt sad. I felt like almost video game hangover. It's the same feeling I get when I play Mass Effect. Is I get that like video game hangover feeling, where it's like it was such a good, unique, memorable experience that you have those little lapses where you're like, oh no other game is gonna possibly compare. And then I went back and play a lot of Destiny, because I really love Crucible, and I remember after that I was like, I need to like burn off this energy, and so I was like, let's go shoot some crap in Destiny, and I just remember being very bored. And so then I went back to a couple other games, like I pulled back Last of Us, things like that, and even that I was like, I'm bored. I miss Final Fantasy. And when you beat it and you do certain options throughout the game, you unlock the hard mode. So that's what we're kind of working on now, and it's interesting. It's intriguing, the level of desire of replayability that the ending gave me, because it's not, obviously, it's not a real ending. We're going to have several parts to this game. We don't know how many parts at this point. Square Enix doesn't even know how many parts at this point. It just becomes down to a marketing decision on, do they want long stretches of time between releases, or do they want to do rapid fire quick releases but have much shorter experiences so they can get it out faster. And being able to want to almost need to see the next step. I think it was awesome. And I know a lot of people weren't really super happy with the episodic formula, even though it's really not truly episodic. But I think it was a good idea because this is a game that I think a lot of people don't realize was pivotal in many a gamer's lives. And it's a game that when we first came out, it was a game that a lot of people didn't want to see end. And this way, it kind of doesn't ever end. Like, even though the first part felt like a very complete game, you know, if you do every side quest, you're looking at anywhere between 30 to 80 hours. So it is very much a full game. And the ending, if you wanted to end it there, as weird as an ending it was an ending. It could be easily one of those open-ended games where you're like, what happened? And I think that's really cool. And then for those that aren't ready for the ride to be over, that open-endedness will flow seamlessly into the next part of the chapter. And I don't know, I'm really curious just to see where they go with it, even though, you know, the original director did come out and say that from this point forward, there's not going to really be any significant changes seen, that from this point on it's going to be very organic to the original source material. Whether I believe that or not is a little bit under question. I don't see how, you know, with the changes made thus far, I don't see how they can really stay true to that at this point. I think it's grown beyond the original narrative structure, so it'll be a ride to see where they go from here, because there's a lot of options that they can do, especially if they decide to elongate releases by doing shorter entries. It's gonna, I don't know how people are gonna receive that, because the first one was not a short entry by any means, unless you really wanted it to be. And so to backtrack from that seems a little odd, but I trust them. You know, they did a really great job with the first part of the remake, and I, you know, obviously a lot of people had skepticism going in, and they, you know, Square Enix proved them wrong. So I'm interested to see, you know, while my personal take would be to do smaller releases would kind of shoot them in a foot, because it would be an antithesis to what the first part was. If they feel like that's the way to do it, I gotta trust them, and they've honored that trust thus far. So it's going to be a show. But it's very cool to see these scenes and these character interactions, and seeing Cloud and his transformative evolution between, you know, this awkward, strong, silent type who can't understand what a high five is, to being definitely more human and more relatable. And to see that with this generation's graphics, with the subtle animations of emotion, seeing behind his eyes, the eyebrow twitches, the pursed lips, that level of detail was impossible to get during the time of the original release. We just didn't have the technology for that. The polygons were great for the time, but they definitely couldn't emote as well as this generation's graphics did. So to be able to see these characters we fell in love with in such a stunning way is just, it's breathtaking. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what is next from Square Enix. So if you guys have played it, this was a little talk about, you know, what we thought about the game. We can do more videos if you guys like. Sound off in the comments if you want to see more in depth, because I'm definitely down to talk about more Final Fantasy. I can dive deep into the combat and the differences between the original. We can dive deep into the costuming, the character development, the interaction, the twists. Let me know. I wanted this to be kind of a broad stroke because I didn't want to dive into any spoiler territory. But if you guys are interested in learning more, or want to talk more about the conversation, we can definitely do that. Just let us know if that's something you're interested in the comments. If you are currently playing or about to play, you can also check out our game hub at primagames.com/games/Final Fantasy VII Remake. That is 7 with the Roman numeral 7. There we have over 100 guides, tips, and tricks. We have a master guide. We're gonna have some really cool Cloud cosplay and Aerith cosplay that, if you're into that, we have tons of that because it's amazing. The community has been very inspired since the release of this. So go check that out. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Prima Games as well with your thoughts of the remake and what you'd like to see our next video be. But yeah, we're excited. I'm excited to see what the next step goes, and hopefully we will get a release date on that in the near future. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.